I want to over deliver. I want them to write down as much information as possible. The more that they write, guys, like what's written is retained. Like they're going to be like, man, like they're like really understanding it the more that they write it out. If it's a term 125, I'm writing down the amount that it's going to pay out, the amount of months that it'll take for their mortgage payments. If it's the full amount, I'll write full, have them write down full, term 125. If it's $100,000 in death benefit, I'll have you write down 125,000 for an accidental death. And then I'll have you write down for critical chronic terminal illness, it's $90,000 that you get access to. Right. And as I'm having them take all this down, if I'm having them write down a lot of stuff, I'll probably show two options. Take a lot of thinking out of it for them. Same thing with term 100. It's the same thing, just without the additional benefit of accidental or the return premium. And I'm going to have them write down two, potentially three options, right? And this is all like, I'm assuming the whole way through I'm doing this. Like, I'm going to say this is the company. They've been around for over 100 years. They never missed a payout claim. They're A-rated, right? They're very dependable and reliable. You don't ever have to go call them. You're going to get to reach out to me directly. We're going to be working together side by side. We're partners in all of this. And since it isn't a matter of whether or not we're going to get it, right, Ray? Correct. Okay, I'll go ahead and pull up your request for coverage and we'll start to put some of your info in and we'll go over these options together. Does that sound fair? And they always go, yep. And I'm like, all right, and your date of birth? And just verify the spelling of your first and last name. I'm starting the app. I'm literally going through it before we picked an option because it's not a matter of whether or not we're going to get it. We're going to do it. We're already going into it. Chris, what's up?
When you're in the app, how do you like treat them with banking and social? Like, how do you treat them differently than a final expense lead?
Um, no, for me, for social, I just ask. I go through the whole first page of the app. You know, in America, it's like, you know, name, height, weight, where you were born, address. I ask them all those questions, email, occupation, phone number, and then I go, and your social, and they just give it to me. Um, Banking, I always say this. There's two different ways that we can set this up. Now, the first way is the way that most of my clients want to go, and it's to set it up so it starts immediately, so you're fully covered in the next 24 to 48 hours, which would mean that the full payment will come out in the next 24 to 48 hours, and the full amount's going to be in place. If anything happens to you, full benefit pays out. The second option is to set it up on a certain day of the month. That way, you know when it's coming out. Some people, when their mortgage comes out on the 1st, they like to set it up for the 15th of the month, just so it's not the same day. Is that what you would rather do? Or would you rather set it up so it starts today and you're fully covered immediately? And then they just say one or the other, right? But I give them the options, you know, I'm not like, when do you want it to be? So I'm just trying to get them to choose. It's like a yes or no question, you know, like they're choosing one or the other, not open-ended.
Okay, and then banking, like you're just like, who do you bank with? What's your routing number? What's your account number? Or this is the
Yeah.
routing
So
number I got pulled up.
Yeah, so banking, I always say, and who do you bank with? And then I'll pull up Google, put in, you know, like I just did state of Delaware, and it was like Dextra, and it's like Dextra Bank, routing number, Delaware. And I hit enter, and then it always pops right up right there. And then I'm like, they'll pull up the routing number here. Just want to verify and confirm with you. Looks like they have whatever it is. Is that correct? And then like half the time they're like, yes, or the other half they're like, oh, hold on, let me check. And then I'm like, perfect. And the account number. And then I just wait for them to say something. And they always just say either like, I got to grab it. I'm going to pull it up. Um, you know, very rarely do I hear any objections at that point. And I do the same thing with final expense. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's
Cool.
great.
What's up, Isabel?
Hey, Tyler, question for you. So, when they still haven't told you they want to go through with it, and you still filling out the application, and I'm talking about America, early on the application, it requires a code. How do you explain that to them? How do you go around that?
So I'm not. I'm after I say I should have, yeah, I'm gonna revert. We jumped ahead a little bit in the process. After they say, so after I say it's not a matter of whether or not we're gonna get this, right? And they say, yes, you're right. It's not a matter of whether or not we're gonna get it. And they agree. I say, okay, since it's not a matter of whether or not we're gonna get it, it's just depending on which one. I'm gonna pull up the request for coverage. Can you verify the spelling of your first and last name? Can you verify your date of birth? So I start the application.
Okay.
I've got my options written down, and I take way more notes on these calls than I do. Like, this is a full page, like I wrote every single square inch of this page because I'm writing the options, I'm writing their whole situation, I'm taking notes on everything, right? So I'm writing down if it's CBO, if it's accident, if it's 125, I'm writing down those options so I can see them and then I can read them off to them. And so after I verify their spelling of their name, their date of birth, then I say, here's option 1 and 2. I want you just to tell me which one makes more sense. Here's option 1. It's going to cover this. This is the accidental amount. This is the amount of living benefits for critical, chronic, and terminal illness that you're going to have access to. And this is how much you're going to get refunded to you once you outlive the policy, which is the goal anyway. So it's like a glorified savings account. And this is option 2. Same thing, and walk through it. Which one makes more sense? Option 1 or 2? If they say, hey, I need to think about it, or if they give me some objections here, I always slow it down. And I'm like, okay, Tom. So Tom, you said that you wanted to make sure that the family had the coverage, right? The family wouldn't be able to make mortgage payments. The family would be in a situation where they're going to have to take out a loan, ask family for money, and you want them to stay in the house, right? Like I slow down and I just ask them a couple questions. I'm like, okay, just to make sure we're on the same page. And then they're always like, yeah, that's correct. And at this point, because we've done such a good job building the value and like being warm with them and walking them through it and re-explaining their situation back to them, like I'm just trying to be real with them. I'm like I'm not trying to do any crazy, tricks, sales tricks or anything. I'm just like, you said that you wanted it, right? And they're like, yeah. And they're like, okay. And I'm like, okay, so if it isn't a matter of whether or not we want it, let's start you off with something that, number one, we know we can afford, because 100% of 100% of my clients agree that if it doesn't make sense financially month to month, it doesn't make sense to do it all, right? Okay, since we both agree about that, let's start with the lower option. You guys can always come back and add on more. And like we were just saying, something's going to be better than nothing. So can you just verify the address for me of the home? Right? Like I'm totally assumptive the whole time. And so that's what I do at the close. Now, if you're going to get any objection at that point, it's I want to think about it. Like I hear that more than I've heard anything else. And when they do really stick to their guns on it, and you'll find that if the husband and the wife aren't both there, if the real decision maker is not there, they will not move forward. Like they just won't. And they just gathered a bunch of info. And it doesn't mean that they're never going to get it. I've actually had success with a third call follow-up. No worries. Our third call that we can go through. It's really just to we're going to either apply or you can decline the coverage, and then we'll be moving forward from there, right? Something like that. And what I've found is a lot of people, like if I present to the wife and I do a good enough job at providing value and showing them that they really do need it, they will get it. But if I buzz through it all and I kind of rush the presentation and the numbers, and there's a third call, they'll just tell me no. So whether it's one person or two people, we want to make sure that we're providing a lot of value. We're having them write a lot of information down. Like I'm trying to make them as comfortable as possible. And I'm acting like I do this. Well, I do this all day long, but I want them to feel like I do, because they're going to feel like they're really getting taken care of. Does that help answer? I know that you asked a question about something else and I kind of
Yes. No. It's perfect. Perfect. Thank you.
Cool. Awesome.